What's up, Dream Builder? Are you someone who's interested in creating a life by your design through all things real estate? Well, I can assure you, you are in the right place. Join me, your host, Casanova Brooks. I'm an award winning real estate agent and investor as we uncover the top tips, strategies, and the mindset of the top real estate entrepreneurs across the world. Stay locked in because we're about to go on a journey that will change your life. Hey, Dream Builder. This episode is powered by Design Crowd. Design Crowd is a website that helps entrepreneurs, startups, and small businesses get creative and quality designs. From custom logos to business cards and even web designs, there's a community of over 900,000 designers from all across the world that's ready to bring your idea to life in as little as hours. So head on over to designcrowd.com/DreamNation and see what all the hype is about. What's up, Dream Builder? We are back again with another episode of Real Estate Gems. And so I'm excited today to be bringing to you a fellow colleague, and I would like to call her a sister, Miss Avery Carl, to the show. Avery, you want to go ahead and say what's up to Dream Nation?
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me.
Cool. It's a pleasure to have you on. Now, I always love to make sure that we start off by giving the proper introduction for every guest. The way that I do that is I compare us as entrepreneurs and thought leaders to superheroes. And the reason being is because we're constantly flying around the world, we're putting on a cape, and we're trying to solve some of the world's biggest problems. And especially in real estate, I know that's the case. Now, here's what we know. We know behind every superwoman that there's this lady named Lois Lane. Right. But what we don't know is behind the superwoman that everyone knows as Avery Carl. Tell us on the backside, who is that Lois Lane?
I mean, I am just a mom and a wife on the backside of that. It's just, it's just me. I'm here in my office in my house. My husband's office is 2 stories up. We've got an 11-week-old. He's sleeping in his bed right now. And we have a 2-year-old who is with her caretaker that we have during the day. And that's just, we're just a family trying to make it really just trying to be able to spend as much time with our family as possible, which is part of the reason that I got into real estate to begin with. And then ended up growing a really big business out of it. But the whole goal is to be able to spend more time with the fam.
I love it. We're definitely going to tap into all of that. So you said before you got into real estate, tell us about what were you doing before you got in and kind of what led to the path of you deciding real estate was going to be your calling.
Sure. So it's definitely not anything I just, when I was a kid, I said I would have grown up to be a real estate agent. I wanted to be a rock star. As a matter of fact, I did tour in bands for a long time until I was about 24, 18 to 24. Around that time, I'd met my husband in New York. We lived in New York for a while, moved to Nashville. I was going to get my master's, or I did get my master's, but we moved to Nashville so that I could get my master's. And my husband just took a job transfer from New York to Nashville. And while we were there, I didn't have my real estate license yet. I was working on the business side of the music business. And our realtor at the time was trying to get us to buy a place in East Nashville, which was really, really up and coming, lots of appreciation happening really quickly. And we just didn't want to go there because we were moving from Brooklyn. We were sick of neighbors. We were moving to a place where we could get some space. So we wanted some space. So we bought something out in the country.
Got
But
it.
yeah. But we thought, okay, well, we do have a little bit of money left. Maybe we should buy one of those houses that's appreciating really quickly, which I would never tell anyone now, knowing what I know now, to ever buy based on appreciation. But that's what we did because we didn't know what we were doing in terms of real estate investing. Luckily, that property cash flows really, really well. It's still my highest performing long-term rental. So that's good for, not having any idea what you're doing. And once we got the first rent check from that, we were like, okay, we're going to build a business out of this. So at that point, we started reading books, listening to podcasts, actually educating ourselves on what we were trying to do. And we only had one down payment's worth of capital left. So we thought, well, how can we take this one? I think we had like $30,000 maybe. And how can we take this and buy something that will make the most amount of money so that we can buy more things faster than, just buying whatever, where the numbers kind of work. So we thought, okay, well, let's try an Airbnb. but we didn't want to do it in Nashville because the regulations just change all the time for short-term rentals there, and it's just kind of nuts. And so we thought, where can we buy something where that's just what people do when they go there, is rent a property that's not a hotel. And I thought of Destin, Florida, which is where I live now, but we couldn't afford that at the time. But the second thing I thought of was the Smoky Mountains, which was about 3 hours away from Nashville, where that's what people do. They go rent a cabin in the Smokies, and that's all there is. There's not really hotels, there's tons of tourism. So we thought, okay, that's probably a good idea. Fast forward, ended up being a really good idea. Scaled that one cabin to 5 within about a year and a half. During that time, I got my real estate license. And that's how I got into actually being a real estate agent. But during that time, friends started saying, "Oh, you're making how much on this cabin? Teach me how to do this." And then it started from being friends to friends of friends to random people on the internet that we call leads now in real estate, that wanted me to help them find a place, analyze it, help them manage, like help them learn how to manage it. I don't manage for other people. My company, the Short Term Shop, was born out of this whole process. So what we do is we have offices in 3, it will be 4 by the end of the year, very vacation rental centric markets. And what we do as agents is we help investors. And I say investors loosely because that sounds like such a, investors are those people over there that we could never be. They seem like these nebulous rich people. And but really what they are just people like you and me. Like it's normally somebody who started exactly how I did, who's got a little bit of a nest egg, who wants to build a business and doesn't know where to start. So what I do is I help them choose the right property. My team teaches them how to manage it so they don't have to pay a property manager for an Airbnb, which is generally between 20 and 40%, depending on which market you're in, so that they can keep all that money and either scale their business or, whatever their goals are. Sometimes it's for one parent to be able to quit their job and stay home with their kids. Sometimes it is a true real estate investor that's just trying to grow their portfolio. So there's a lot of different types of people who come to us who want us to help them find a property and teach them how to manage it and basically get them, off on the path of financial independence is kind of what we do.
Got it. No, I love it. Now, if we could go back, because there's going to be a lot of people that have never gotten into the Airbnb, right? And they have the same thing of like, I got $10,000 maybe or $15,000, and I want to know what's going to allow me to scale this the fastest. What were the deciding factors? And take us back to what year was this when you got this first cabin? What year was it?
It wasn't that long ago. It was the beginning of 2016 or end of 2015.
Got it. And what was the deciding factors that made you settle in on Airbnbs or short-term rentals versus anything else that you could have did in real estate?
So we already had the long-term rental that we bought in the high appreciating area of Nashville. So that one was making about $900 a month over the mortgage. So it was actually cash flowing that much. And so we thought, well, if we're renting this on a short-term basis and we're charging X amount per night, and these things seem to be rented out. See, when we started, there weren't all these really cool tools. You could use like AirDNA, where you can actually see how much a property is supposed to make, based on the number of bedrooms or the location. So we just got on Airbnb and VRBO and use what we call it the enemy method now, where you get on the platform, look at your potential neighbors, your enemies, and see like, okay, I'm buying a 2-bedroom. This person down the street has a 2-bedroom. They are pretty booked out. They're making about this much per night. So we just kind of ran comps basically that way, and did take a little bit of a leap of faith on the first one. We thought, well, if this doesn't work, we'll sell it. Or if it doesn't work, maybe we'll try to long-term rent it. But turns out it worked really well. Now the Smoky Mountains are on the top of every single list as far as best places to invest in short-term rentals. So we really did just kind of take a leap of faith, because there were not really the amount of resources back then that there are now in terms of being able to analyze and choose where is the best place to do something like that.
Got it. No, I love it. And because I think that that's what a lot of people get stuck at, right? They feel like that they just don't even know what are the factors that they should be looking for. But I think when you break it down like that, where you're just like, look around and see what other people are already written for, and then just reverse engineer it. Now, when you guys bought your first property, were you focused on what you could buy the property for, as in getting the best deal? Or were you like, hey, we'll pay full price if we can get X amount of dollars out of it and cash flow this every month based on this, now what's called enemy method?
Yeah. So what we did was the best way to analyze a short-term rental is what you can expect to make off of what versus what you can get the property for. At the time, we had some budget constraints, so we were really trying to analyze that, but also, make it fit our budget, which was really, really difficult because our budget was really low. We ended up buying something that, most of these things come furnished because they're previous vacation rentals and they're pretty turnkey. But the one we got had been a long-term rental. It was in really bad shape, but it was all stuff that we could fix ourselves and it wasn't going to be a big rehab project. But the best way to analyze it is what this property will make versus what you're able to get it for, or a fancy word for it, cash on cash return. What you have to put down initially on the property versus what you're making at the end of the year after
So
expenses.
so let's use, for somebody that's listening right now or watching this and they say, okay, well, give me an example. Like, just give me easy numbers on a way that I could analyze this. Could you do that?
Yeah. So what I there's with short-term rentals, it's a little more difficult to analyze down to the number than long-term rentals, because long terms, it's like they fit really nice into a spreadsheet. Here's the rent, that's going to be the same every month, and that's what it is. With short terms, it's always going to be kind of a range, because your summertime is going to be heavier than like a Wednesday in February, and it's also going to be really dependent on how you manage the property. If you're using a manager, you're going to be making less money than if you're managing yourself, which managing yourself is 100% doable remotely, but that's a different topic, different question. So what I recommend doing when you're trying to figure out how much a property will make is using as many data points as possible. So AirDNA is one. It's a great data source. It's not perfect, but it's a subscription service where you can buy their data and see, okay, this is the zip code that I'm focusing on, and it shows you by number of bedrooms what the occupancy rate, gross annual income, and average price per night is on that size property. So it'll give you kind of a range, and you can say, okay, well, this is what something should make. This is what these properties of this size are going for in this market, and you can kind of analyze it that way. And then to get a couple extra data points, I recommend going to one of the big short-term rental, like national property managers like Vacasa, Evolve, Turnkey, because those guys have access to a lot of data that we as just regular people don't have. And they're able to tell you, this is we manage this many in this market. This is what a 4-bedroom in this market will do. So I recommend using a combination of AirDNA, enemy method, and those major property management companies to kind of give you a ballpark of what a property should be able to do.
Got it. And so when you said cash on cash return, are you looking at it as a percentage of how much you need to make every single month or a year? Or are you looking at it as to say, okay, if we can cash flow on this thing, $500, $700 a month based off of the lowest occupancy rate, then I think that it's good for us to move forward. How does that look for you?
For me, I don't actually operate with a very specific metric. So a lot of what most people do in short-term rental analysis is they'll analyze based on cash return. So they'll say they need at least 20% cash on cash return, kind of separates the men from the boys in terms of income, but people can do well up to 40. I've seen 60% very easily in some of these markets. Another metric that people use a lot in short-term rentals is the gross rent multiplier. So the rent expressed as a percentage of the purchase price. So if a $500,000 property rents, makes $100,000 a year, that's 20%. So the separation of men from the boys line there is anything that can do 10% of the purchase price is considered like pretty good, like a base hit. 15% is like, okay, this is a good one. You probably need to buy this. And then 20% is considered a home run. So like that 500,000 that makes 100,000, that's something that doesn't need to be passed up.
Got it. Got it. No, I love it. So for you, looking at it right now, we're in obviously a pandemic, and it will come up, it will lift, we just don't know when. A lot of people are wondering, is it still a great time to get into Airbnb or any VRBO or short-term rentals just in general? Or do you recommend that people wait until they know exactly what the regulations and everything else is going to be, maybe in the spring and the summertime?
It just depends on which market you want to invest in. So there's three types of markets for short-term rentals. There's the metro markets like Nashville, New York, Austin. And then there are the big national fly-to vacation markets like Hawaii, Orlando, Aspen, think places where people basically all have to fly to go on vacation there. And then there are the regional drivable markets that are within a 5 to 8 hour drive of big cities. And the regional drivable markets have actually boomed since coronavirus started. So I own places obviously in the Smoky Mountains, Destin, Florida, Gulf Shores, Alabama, and the majority of the tourism on any regular year is driving to those places. So those are big drivable destinations. Those types of markets, even the ones that I'm not in, like Big Bear, California, the Poconos, the Catskills, places like that, are all booming because people don't want to get on flights and be in a confined space with people, and they also don't want to go to big metro areas, again, too many people around, and they don't want to stay in hotels because too many people around. So people are wanting to stay in control of their environment, so they want to do drive vacations, and then they want to not be around a lot of people, which puts you in an Airbnb. So metro markets have really, really suffered and are going to have a harder time coming back. The fly to vacation markets are somewhere in between. They're suffering still some, but not as bad as the big metros. And then the regional ones are booming. So it just depends on which type of market you want to invest in. I would say be the most careful with the metro markets, because even in the best of times, those are the ones that have the most volatile regulations that are constantly changing. And the big vacation markets, even the fly to ones or drive to ones, generally will have figured out the short-term rental regulation thing decades ago, because that's what people have been doing when they go on vacation to these places for decades. So anyway, the answer to almost everything regarding short-term rentals is it depends.
It depends. And that's everything in real estate, right? I mean, it's
Right.
always, what are you looking for? It depends. Are you looking for cash flow? Are you looking for appreciation? I know you said that we wish we would have did it a different way if we were starting again, but you talked about managing the properties yourself. Now I think, because we don't own anymore, but we had 3 properties that were all Airbnb. We then switched them to long term, which we still have. But I think one of the struggles that we had was the fact that it was hard to manage them, virtually. Even for us, I mean, it was only 35 minutes away. It was just on the other side of the town. But what we found is like the cleaning was tough, right? And then if you get in there, and every tenant or guest has a different expectation. And so it could be the fact that somebody else took the key or whatever. So how do you recommend that people can start out with very low maintenance on managing themselves? And what are the things that they maybe need to look for that you found are big reasons why people get out of Airbnb that could have been prevented?
Sure. So I think a lot of people, they get started with Airbnbs and they get really hung up with, I want mine to be a special experience. I want to get all of the people. I want everybody who makes an inquiry. I want to book. Whereas you can mitigate a lot of bad review situations by asking guests the right questions up front and not taking every guest. So you can tell by the questions that a guest asks on their first few questions on the inquiry if they're going to be a pain in the ass or not. And if they are, they're probably going to leave a bad review. So if somebody is asking you a bunch of questions when they first book that are clearly stated in the listing, or, if they're like, oh, hey, can you rent me a pack and play for my baby because when we come in 2 weeks? Well, no, that's your responsibility. But if somebody's asking for extras already, they're probably going to be the type of person that scoots the refrigerator away from the wall and then complains that there's dust under there.
Right.
So we do a lot of, and we teach that to our clients in our education after, once they get a property under contract, how to kind of ask the right questions and make sure, because you don't have to take every booking, and taking every booking is the kind of thing that is going to result in like the parties and the stuff like that. And a lot of times you'd be surprised how people tell on themselves. Like we've had people say, "Oh my gosh, your property's so cute. We can't wait to book it for my friend's bachelorette party." And we're like, please don't.
Right.
um, so it's important to not get caught up in that, and then also get caught up in trying to make your place the most unique experience and the best. And by doing that, you are causing yourself to use up a lot of your own time and resources that you don't need to. So we really focus on automating a lot of stuff, and we really try to teach our clients to not micromanage their guests. So we use a channel manager called earporter, and it sends automated templates. So when it automatically sends check-in instructions 2 days before check-in. So it's got their door code, the directions, a list of FAQs that like any answer to any question they could possibly have. Same thing 2 days before checkout, sends you checkout instructions. And we just kind of, let the guests roll. And if they have questions, if it's something that's in the listing, we say, "Oh, please refer to the listing." So we set the expectation and kind of train the guests not to ask us a zillion questions. If they ask 2 questions and we say, "Oh, that's in the listing. Oh, that's in the listing over here," then they kind of know, okay, let me look through the listing first, because they're not just going to answer my question. Now, you still want to be polite and have customer service, but you can kind of train the guests to do what you need them to do. And as far as cleaning, so I only own stuff in vacation heavy markets. So there's a lot more of there's not a ton of cleaners, and like you're not just going to like shake a stick and hit 20 good cleaners, but it's much more of an industry. The short-term rental cleaning business is much more of an industry in those markets than like some of the metro markets where Airbnb being properties is kind of a new thing as of the past 15 years. So like in the Smokies, for example, all the independent cleaners that clean Airbnbs used to work for a big property manager and used to clean their cabins in between. So it's easier to find in those types of markets than it is in like Nashville, where you just have to, maybe find somebody off Craigslist and kind of train them on what it looks like to clean an Airbnb in between bookings. Whereas in the Smokies, they've always done that as a job. They know exactly what needs to be done, and pretty much all the cleaners are going to have the same process.
Hey, Dream Builder, if you're anything like me, you have no idea how to come up with a quality logo or even a creative design. You know that quality is important, but it's not always the easiest to nail down, right? That's where Design Crowd comes in. Whether it's a logo, a website, book cover, or even a social media ad, they have a community of over 900,000 professional designers around the world ready to help solve your creative problem. Head on over to designcrowd.com/DreamNation to learn more. And just for being a part of the DreamNation tribe, you're going to receive a special VIP offer when you sign up of up to $150 credit. Now, instead of waiting weeks for an agency to pitch you an idea, you'll be able to get a design of exactly what you need within just 3 days. So again, head on over to designcrowd.com/DreamNation and check it out. Got it. So it's make sure when you're buying this Airbnb that it's very location dependent, because these are some of the things that can help you and alleviate some of your pains when you're first getting in. No, I love it. So talk to me about, for a lot of people, they already own a home and maybe they don't have 20%, or even 30% if it's going to be a vacation rental. Have you found that there are different ways to be able to get these Airbnb properties, no matter if you find a good deal or not, rather than putting down 20, 30%? Or you're like, no, that's just the standard?
There is definitely a very specific loan product for this. It's called the vacation home loan, or the second home loan. It is a Fannie Freddie conventional product, so any lender can do it, assuming that the bank or the mortgage broker that they work for doesn't have their own specific rules around it. If you use a local lender to the vacation market that you're buying in, then that's recommended because they will be somebody who does this type of stuff all the time and won't get tripped up. But anyway, what the vacation home loan is you only have to put 10% down, and the interest rate is less than a conventional investment loan. But there are a couple of rules that you want to make sure that you follow. So you're not allowed to put a lease on it or a contract with a property manager, anything that takes the control away from you as the owner. You have to have the ability, you don't have to stay in it according to the guidelines now. Definitely check with your lenders. I'm not a lender, so don't take my advice as gospel. But you have to have the ability to stay in it for a portion of the year. You don't have to actually do that, but you just have to have control of it so that you can. And then there's a few other stipulations, like you can only have one per market. It has to be over 65 miles away from your primary. But you could, what a lot of people do is get vacation home loans in each market and buy more than one Airbnb, because you can only get one per market, but you could go get one in the Smokies and then one in Destin and then one in Big Bear, California, all for 10% each. So you definitely want to check with your lender and make sure that you're following the rules there. But that is a tool that a lot of short-term rental investors use to leverage vacation rental properties.
Got it. Do you ever see anybody doing the arbitrage method? Like basically finding, properties that maybe are vacant or whatever it is, and then them saying, hey, you know what, I want to rent out or lease your space, and then just using it on Airbnb. Is that common in these big vacation markets, or would you say no, they put a stop on it?
It's not as common in the vacation markets, and it's not because there's regulations against it, but that method just works a lot better in the metro markets, because the vacation markets, every corner you turn, there's a big property management company. So where you could make as an owner more money just putting it with a vacation rental property manager than you would putting a long-term lease for a long-term lease price on it with an arbitrager and then letting them make the spread. So just the owners in short-term rental markets they have better options to make more money than to rent to an arbitrager like you would. That works really, really well in metro markets for sure. But there's just so many options that are more lucrative for owners in the true vacation markets. I'm not saying it couldn't ever work, but it's just much less prevalent and much harder to accomplish in those types of markets.
Got it. No, it makes 100% sense. Now, I want to transition over to something, because how you are at the company now, EXP, right? Realty. And that's where we were really connected at when I saw that you were a fellow EXPer. So talk to me about, and you don't have to mention your last company, but talk to me about how long you were at your last company, right? And then what made you make the decision to move over?
I hopped around brokerages for my first few years. And the problem that I kept running into that other agents don't, uh, don't run into as much is that I had to be a member of a lot of different MLSs that are hours away from each other. And I was with a really big national brokerage at first, and the franchise owner would have had to drive the 4 hours to the Smoky Mountains to join their MLS board and take their orientation. And he just wasn't going to do that when he's got 400 other agents. And why would he do that for me? And so then I ended up switching to a smaller local brokerage who I could convince, because I had really good volume at that point. So I said, hey, look at this volume. I need access to this MLS. I didn't even have access to the main MLS that I was selling under for about a year and a half. So I took this volume to this other broker and I said, I will come over to you if you go and get this access. And so they did. And then I continued to grow. We're at, for this year, to give you an idea of the kind of volume that we're doing, we're at almost 150 million in volume. So
just on the retail side.
Just on the retail, only selling short-term rentals to investors.
Wow.
So when I decided that I wanted to expand across state lines, because I had, my grandmother lives in Destin, Florida, which is a very big short-term rental market. I'm super familiar with it. We grew up spending time here. So I needed a big brokerage to be able to support me in doing that. And then expanding into other markets. We're in 3 right now: Smokies, Destin, Panama City Beach area in Florida, and then Gulf Shores, Alabama. We will be in Blue Ridge, Georgia by the end of the year. So I needed a big company that could support that kind of growth. And EXP, I had a friend who was with EXP, and she started talking to me about it. And EXP is already a member of every single MLS in every state. And that's exactly what I needed. And then it also gave me the ability to sell across state lines, which I also needed. So there were really only two companies that could do that for me, which is EXP and Keller Williams. And EXP just had better support and had what I needed to be able to achieve the goals that I had for myself and my company. So here I am.
Got it. Now, for you, was anything about having ownership in it, like the stocks, was all of that just like icing on the cake, or did that play a factor? And also, before we even get to that, because I definitely wanted to know that, but how, like, did you hear about EXP in the beginning and then you're like, nah, I'm not going to make the move? Or did you already know, like, this is a place that it's only a matter of time?
So EXP, I didn't really hear about it until a few months before I decided I wanted to move anyway. And actually, the previous, what really actually kicked my ass over the line to make the switch was, so I was with that local brokerage, and things were going okay and fine. And this was all within my first year of real estate. And a really good friend of mine was with EXP. And so she was like, you should come over. You should come over. I'm like, I don't want to make the switch and doing too much volume. But I got Rookie of the Year in Nashville. And the owner of the brokerage, I mean, it wasn't that small. It's got several hundred agents, called me into their office. I'd never met him before. And he said, how'd you do this much volume? Is your husband a developer and let you sell all of his properties? And I was like, so offended by that.
Right.
Like, I, as a woman, could not possibly do this volume by myself. I must be married to a developer. Like, why would you? I just brought you this amazing award to your office and you just insulted me like this. So I was like, okay, well, no, he's not. And I just kind of like left and didn't really think anything else, but I was like, I'm leaving after that. So anyway, the rev share makes a big difference because I do hit a lot of milestones every year. So I've got quite a bit of EXP stock sitting there growing, which is awesome. But for me, what has helped me the most are the mega teams and mega agents in my upline that I have access to. So as I'm growing and when I hit a point where I'm like, I don't know what to do about this. I don't know what to do about this growing pain. What do I do? How do I organize this? I can call any of those guys that are in my upline and say, hey, you're selling 500 million a year. I'm here at 100. I'm having a problem with X, Y, and Z. How did you deal with this when you were here? And they all answer their phone for me, like as soon as I call. So it's really nice just having that network of other agents who will answer their phone, who are X amount of steps ahead of me, who will answer their phone when I have a question about growing and things that, not just any other agent's going to be able to answer for me.
No, I think that's so critical because a lot of people, when they hear virtual brokerage, right, they think that it's all like that you're on your own island, but they don't understand that the collaboration is just it's so important because there's other people that are invested, not only financially, but just emotionally in your success, because when we all win, right, as then the company grows. So I think that's a critical point. And I know when I first heard about EXP, it did take me a little bit of time. It didn't take me very long, but it took me a little bit of time to probably 2.5, 3 weeks, which isn't very long, but I wasn't instant about it, which I've heard some people that like they've signed up before they even left. So I was curious to hear what your thoughts were. How big have you grown your team to now?
So when I first started at EXP, it was just me and a transaction coordinator, and we were just doing Nashville and the Smoky Mountains. I've gotten out of Nashville just because the short-term rental regulations are too crazy. It makes me too nervous for my clients. So it's just a headache that I don't want anymore. But we were just in Nashville and the Smokies. And since then, I now have a team of 12 agents in the Smokies, Gulf Shores, Alabama, and Destin, Florida. I've got 2 admins and then 2 transaction coordinators. So we've grown pretty big. We went from 20 million in my second year to now we're just under 150 towards the end of 2020. So we've got pretty big pretty quickly, and I would not have been able to do that at a smaller brokerage for sure.
No, that's what's up. So talk to me about, what do you think the value is in teaching people to work with investors? Because a lot of real estate agents, as you know, they don't work with investors. They only focus on home buyers, home sellers, things like that. But for me, when I first got started, I was working with investors, which helped me to be able to, I guess, differentiate myself. What do you think the value is? Why do you sell someone saying, hey, if you come over here, we're not necessarily just going to focus on, buyers and sellers, but we want to talk to these investors that could buy these properties?
I personally love working with investors because it's a strategy that the more you educate yourself, the more clients you will get, because there's not a lot of agents who either own investment properties or can at least talk the talk and use the lingo and analyze properties. Whereas with I personally will not work with primary home buyers. And we stopped taking anything but short-term rental investors last year just because that became our niche. But at first when I was getting started, I never felt confident working with first-time home buyers or even seasoned home buyers because everything was so subjective. It wasn't like, okay, here's this property, this is how much it costs, this is how much it's going to make you. Does that make sense to you? With home buyers that are buying a primary, it's like, oh, there's not enough room for the dog. Oh, I hate this paint color. And you're like, you could change the paint color for very cheap. And it's just, there's so much emotional things involved that I can't deal with it personally. It drives me nuts. Whereas investments, it's like, this is what it's going to make. Yes or no? No. Okay. On to the next one. This is what this is going to make. And then also investors buy more than one property. So if you get them a successful property, they're going to come back and buy more from you. Whereas primary home buyers average, they might move once every 7 years, I think is the average. So you're not, and then I've had investors buy up to $10 million worth of properties with me in 1 year because that first one was successful. So it's a situation where if you get someone a successful product and you build a good relationship with them, that it's going to 10x itself really, really quickly. And I just personally can't handle the I don't like this, I don't like that. Just here's the numbers. What do you think?
Here's the numbers.
Yeah.
No, and there's some people, I'm glad that you said that, because there's some people that are listening or watching this right now, and they're like, that's exactly me. Like, I'm about to go crazy, dealing with a home buyer or even a home seller and things like that, right? So the greatest thing about real estate is there's a place for everyone, depending on what your niche is. Like, and that's a valid point. So I love that you brought that up. Now, at the beginning, you talked about you had to get educated on real estate, right? And you said books and podcasts or blogs or whatever. Where was your go-to? Because for a lot of people right now, they would like to educate themselves, whether they're brand new or they're thinking about getting in. Did you have any resources that you were like, this really helped me in my first couple years to be able to stay on track?
I'm sure this is the most trite and said 100 times book ever, but Millionaire Real Estate Agent by Gary Keller. And then also,
Really?
yeah, and Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Got it. Yeah, that's probably the number
Yeah.
one. When you were gonna say millionaire real estate agent, I think that's definitely MREA is great, but I was like, no, Rich Dad Poor Dad is definitely the one.
Yeah, yeah. And so Millionaire Real Estate Agent just kind of helped me to understand how, if I hadn't read that, I would have had a lot harder time with the growth that I've had, which I never expected to get to this point in volume anyway. But I just kind of wanted an idea of how to organize my business. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I mean, I don't have to say anything about that. Everybody has read it. Everybody knows. I was a big, mistakenly, or not mistakenly, he's got some good points, but I was a big Dave Ramsey person when I had my corporate job and stuck to a lot of that stuff. And I will say that it did help me to save my first down payment. But then there's so many things that I disagree with now, knowing that not all debt is bad debt, leveraging to buy investment properties, as long as they're cash flowing with the debt leverage, then I'd rather have 5 leverage properties than 1 paid off. So
Mm.
definitely, yeah, Kiyosaki. And it really, Cash Flow Quadrant by Kiyosaki is a lot of people haven't read that one. But those are the big ones.
No, I 100% agree. I mean, I never was an avid Dave Ramsey person, even though I know a lot of people that are, and cash envelopes and everything else. But once I learned that, really rich dad, poor dad, but once I learned that all debt was not bad debt, and it just depends on how you use the debt, even the debt that's in your current home, right? It's monopoly money if you don't go tap into it. But a
Mhm.
lot of people are like, oh yeah, I got my house is paid off, or I got $150,000 in equity in my house. And it's like, well, what are you doing with that money? You could be using it because money's constantly changing. It's changing hands from banks to banks, and they're loaning out that money somewhere. So you might as well get your piece of it. So that's so critical to know. This has been a phenomenal conversation. I know we're coming to the end here, but one question that I want to ask is people see your success now. They love your story, and a lot of people will probably resonate with your story, especially if they're in the short-term rental market. But they look at it and they have a question, the same question that I have. Knowing that you are so much wiser now than when you first got in, and now being a mother and having a family, if you can go back and you could change one thing, or if there was one thing that you wish you would have implemented sooner to accelerate your path on your journey and your dream, what would that one thing be?
I would say figure out your systems and implement them before you're so busy that you need them. The biggest headache and hardest part of the growth that I have achieved in the past several years is the needing to organize the way that whether it's leads coming in or the way that we're handling transactions on the back end, um, is not having the system set up until I was way too busy to be able to go back and get it set up. And by the time you realize that you need it, it's usually too late. So
Mm.
that's been the biggest struggle and headache, is having to go back and try to organize things that if I had kept this started the system earlier, then I wouldn't have had such a hard time. Traction by Gino Wickman. That is a book I recommend reading for anyone who's trying to grow a business. Also, Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz.
Mm.
Really good one as well. But definitely systems are really, really important. Even if you think that, you've only got 2 or 3 clients right now and you've got plenty of time, you don't need one. You do. Go ahead and get it set up.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's funny. Gino, we haven't had him on the show yet, but we've had Mike Michalowicz on, and yeah, Clockwork is a great book. And I would also add E-Myth. Have you read E-Myth?
I have read E-Myth. Yes, this is a great one. I was
Yeah.
the pie lady for so long.
And there's so many, and yeah, I mean we could go up for books for days, but I love that you brought both of those up. I think they're both phenomenal authors, and so yeah, that's definitely something for someone to read if they haven't already. The last question that I have for you is: there's somebody out there that they have a dream, they want to accelerate their dream just like you've done, but they have that little voice in their head. And that little voice says that they're not strong enough, they're not smart enough, or maybe they just don't have enough resources to do what you've done. What's the one thing that you would leave that person with to get them to just take action?
Fake it till you make it.
Mm.
When I got my first clients that weren't friends, there were a lot of questions of theirs that I did not know the answer to. And I would just say, oh, you know what? Let me just check on a few things and I'll call you back. And then I'd go research and figure out what the answer is. So it's you kind of just have to get out there and educate yourself, read all the books. So if you want to work with investors, read a bunch of books, listen to a bunch of real estate investing podcasts, and you will get the right mindset. And really, when clients are looking for an agent, they're just looking for someone whose mindset uh, matches with theirs. So that doesn't matter if you don't own any properties or if you've only closed 2 deals. If your mindset and your communication works with the client, then they're going to choose you. And that happened to me when I got my first few clients. I'd only sold like 5 or 10 deals, and I was so worried they were going to ask me how experienced I was, and they never did. I just, got them the answers to their questions and worked hard and didn't point out that I wasn't that experienced, and they didn't ask. So fake it till you make it, for sure.
Got it. Hey, there's nothing wrong with it. Eventually, I mean, at the end of the day, your belief system, if you look in the middle of the word, it's the word lie, right? So, not that you want to do it negatively, but it's the story that you tell yourself every single day. I will be a successful investor. I will be the investor's agent, right? All these things. I am the investor's agent. It's those affirmations that you tell yourself. And if you take that action every single day, eventually it snowballs, right, into who you are today. So I love it. If no one else has told you, I want to be the first one to say I appreciate you and thank you. It's definitely been a great conversation. For anybody who wants to stay connected with you, where can they find you at?
You can find me on my website, theshorttermshop.com. The phone numbers on there are textable because we are millennials and we like to text. So shoot us a text, or Instagram is the best way to get me on social media. And yeah, we're out there.
Yo, I love, and this is just, I love the fact that you're still in training people how to talk to you, right? Going back to that Airbnb. The phone numbers are textable. So you can not give me a call. It was text me because I don't want that phone call. No, it's all good. I'm sure somebody understands that. And again, I want to be the first one to say thank you. This has been a phenomenal conversation. Just as she said, Dream Nation, you have to take action. And even if that means that for now, for the short term, you have to fake it until you make it, just take action on your dreams, because otherwise that dream that you have will only merely be a fantasy. That's all for this one. We'll catch you on the next one. First, I want to say thank you for allowing me to walk with you on this real estate journey. If you've gotten anything out of this episode, do me a favor and head on over to iTunes if you have access and leave me a review. My whole goal is to make sure that I'm serving you all the right way. You're my tribe. You're who I care about. You're why I do this. So if you want to give me any type of thanks, or if you want to let me know whatever your thoughts or your feelings are from this episode or any other episode that you've listened to, leave me a rating or review. And also, if you're looking for more tips, strategies, and even resources when it comes to leveling up your real estate game, head on over to DreamNationAcademy.com. We have a really cool real estate section there, and it's something that I wish that I would have had when I first got started in real estate. So that's DreamNationAcademy.com. Don't wait. I'll see you on the other side.